Today on Cinema Gulp, we are reviewing Captain America: Civil War. As usual, this review is going to contain a lot of spoilers, so if you haven't seen the movie, go out and see it and then revisit us.
This job, we try to save as many people as we can. Sometimes that doesn't mean everybody. But you don't give up.
New York, Washington, D.C., Sokovia.
Okay, that's enough.
Captain, people are afraid.
That's why I'm here. We need to be put in check. Whatever form that takes, I'm game.
I'm sorry, Tony. If I see a situation pointed south, I can't ignore it. Sometimes I wish I could.
Sometimes I want to punch you in your perfect teeth.
I know we're not perfect. But the safest hands are still our own.
Today on Cinema Gulp, we're discussing Captain America: Civil War. The Captain America franchise on its own has now become essentially three different genres throughout three different films. First, Avenger is an homage to the golden age of cinema with sort of an Indiana Jones adventurous feel to it. The film plays as one huge montage for the most part in order to get the viewers caught up with the character's mythos. The Winter Soldier was a spy action thriller set in DC with elements of Jason Bourne and 3 Days of the Condor. For my money, still the strongest of the Captain America films. And now with Civil War, it's dipped its toes into the tragic revenge thriller that feels much more like an Avengers film than a Captain America one. This time around, our heroes are split down the middle as the Sokovia Accord, a new registration act requiring all enhanced individuals to fall under UN control, is set in motion. Backed by unpopular demand from the last Captain film is Bucky, aka Winter Soldier, as he sneaks himself into the third lead role of the film at the request of utterly no one. Also back are most Earth-based Avengers, with the exception of the Hulk. Here we watch as the once strongly connected supergroup decide for extremely vague reasons that they all want to fight each other. Having said that, the violence has been toned down significantly from the brutally violent Winter Soldier. This film stars Chris Evans, Robert Downey Jr., Scarlett Johansson, Elizabeth Olsen, Sebastian Stan, Anthony Mackie, Jeremy Renner, Don Cheadle, Paul Bettany, Chadwick Boseman, Paul Rudd, Emily Van Camp, Tom Holland, and unfortunately not Samuel L. Jackson. This film was a decent Avengers film. However, as a follow-up to The Winter Soldier, it fails to recapture the tone and the fast-paced danger of its superior predecessor, while trying to juggle once again an overly stuffed, extra-large meat lover's pizza of superhero egos and convoluted plotting. Civil War suffers from not only too many tonal shifts, but also shifts in its narrative and main character focus. At one point in the film, I thought to myself that these characters in the 8-year-long and 12-movie lifespan were once well-spoken and smart enough to sit down and actually talk out their indifferences or problems that may have had towards one another. Okay, so John, what did you think of Captain America: Civil War?
Well, I was a pretty big fan of Captain America: The Winter Soldier. I really liked the first film as well. In fact, I watched them both again gearing up for Civil War, and I felt like I was starting to think that really the Captain America series, 3 films, would be the best series within the Marvel Universe. But I was kind of let down by this third film. That was my thought going into it. Man, if this film's as good as it's going to be, then these 3 films together are going to make a great trilogy. And this was kind of a letdown from what we got in those last 2 films. I think what the directors did with Winter Soldier, the action that they brought, the Russos, the action that they brought to the screen on that film was unlike anything we had seen for years.
It's incredible.
It's incredible, and it still holds up. I know we're only a couple years away from that film, but really nobody has done that kind of style of action that felt that visceral and really gave you the feeling of, these punches and this excitement on screen. You really were kind of living the excitement, not just watching it, I thought, in that film.
It was well-cut action. It was really well done in all regards. The sound was great, yeah.
And it wasn't in this film. I mean, I don't know what your take on the action scenes were, but I felt like it was missing all of that visceral action that we got in Winter Soldier. I think maybe one or two moments stood out in this film that kind of harkened back to that style that they had, but there was way too much shaky cam.
Here's the what I think was kind of the kiss of death, which going into it, hearing about these reports, was that the Russo brothers brought in the fight coordinator of John Wick to help them with some of the fight sequences.
Terrible.
Why? You don't need to. The Winter Soldier's action sequences are way better than anything in John Wick.
That was
First
a point I
class.
made about the Winter Soldier. I did a little review for myself, and the point I made was, man, I love that score and how
it just fuels that movie.
The pulse pounding, tempo rising score that has, and it's unique. It's not like all the other crap we're hearing these days.
Not.
It was very unique, and it had those jarring moments, the moments when the Winter Soldier would actually like pop out and almost be like
He was menacing
a villain from a horror movie, because he was seriously scary, and the way the music helped to make those jarring moments work. Still had a few moments where they tried to tie those sound effects in with the Winter Soldier on screen, but it never had the effect that it had in Winter Soldier.
It didn't. That was the thing. Winter Soldier, to me, it had well shot action, well cut action, well choreographed action, and then it had that score that fueled the hell out of it. I loved that score. I'm glad you thought so too. That was one of the first things going into this movie I was looking for right off the bat, was does it have that same score? And it didn't.
This was more of like an Avengers score.
It was worse than an Avengers. It was hokey.
Yeah, it was hokey. In fact, I wrote that down. Sappy. I thought there were moments that felt sappy in this, and I was really surprised at the end. I did notice that it was the same guy, and was surprised. Like, man, that I felt like they took one of the guys who's done Avengers or Thor or Iron Man or any of the other Marvel movies, because I don't think any of the Marvel movies except for Winter Soldier had ever stood out as having a good score. It was always just kind of middle of the road. What you expect from these movies, always forgettable.
Right.
Winter Soldier was the only memorable one they've had. Maybe Iron Man, but I can't even really remember.
I don't
Iron
think
Man's
any of the I know all three Iron Mans had different composers scoring them, and none of them were memorable to me. I did like the Guardians of the Galaxy, not just the '70s music, but they did have a good theme song.
Yeah.
But their action music wasn't all that great. The Winter Soldier, the action movie, because that movie is constant action, but it was telling a great story, in my opinion. In between,
it has a great story as well. One of the better stories of all the Marvel universe as well. So this movie had a lot to live up to, just off of the heels of Winter Soldier.
Yes, it did.
Not off the heels of things like Ultron and some of the other Marvel movies. I think it actually is pretty good when you just line it up against other Marvel movies to some extent. But really lining it up against Winter Soldier and knowing that these were the same directors, and how excited they had gotten me off of that film. The anticipation in this one, just from the action scenes alone and what I thought they were going to be able to bring to these action scenes, and then mixing in all these characters we didn't have in Winter Soldier, all the powers we were going to be able to see and what they could do with that. It really just, to me, it felt like another Avengers movie with even that similar style of action we've seen in Avengers movies. Although there's a lot more shaky cam in this than I think we've got in any Marvel movie, which was really surprising.
Nauseating, especially that scene where where Captain America and the Winter Soldier finally see each other again, and then they're trying to escape.
They're in like Bucharest.
They're going through that that stairwell, and I think it was supposed to be really intense, but it was just nauseating.
Yeah, it was. There was one moment in there where I think it's the Winter Soldier, grabs onto the railing and jumps down and uses the railing almost as a rope to kind of swing down.
Like
that
Zorro.
was the kind of like kinetic action that we saw in Winter Soldier. That one moment stood out to me as, okay, this is what I want from these guys. That's 1 second of the freaking movie.
The Winter Soldier had people punching and kicking each other and blocking each other the way the Bourne movies did, where it had this loud smack and it was really brutal and it was cut perfectly. This one, I think they really thought that they had this, and we're in the minority with some of these issues because people are sucking this movie's dick left and right, but
they will on opening weekend, and then people will come back down to earth eventually.
But let's start from the beginning really quickly, because everyone knows what this movie's about. It's basically Tony Stark's Iron Man has come to his senses for some stupid, lame, glossed over reason.
Yeah, I don't understand that him
one,
taking
is that the
point of
only
view.
lady that's ever come up to him and said you've caused the murder of somebody? Like that's had to have
so
happened since
stupid.
2008.
Yeah.
The best line in the movie is when Vision says, once Iron Man started showing up, all this shit started happening.
Yeah, that totally made the most sense, the most logic anyone said in the movie, for sure.
I'm reading a lot of stuff online that people just hate Tony Stark now because his character's just.
Doesn't make
He's
any
just
sense.
so
the choices he's
hypocritical.
making.
Yeah, it just doesn't make any sense. They're they're
They
180
did. I feel like this was the worst time, the worst performance for not really the worst performance, because there were some nice things he did with the performance in there. It was actually a little bit more dramatic than we've ever seen him have to play the character. But losing his humor and being so serious for the first half of the film, and then all of a sudden we want to introduce Spider-Man so he can go right back to being the Tony Stark we all love and being the jokester. But then in the end it gets all dour and serious again. It's like his tonal changes throughout the film did not make sense for the character that we've all loved. They should have found out a way to keep him that fun-loving character even within this story.
Where was that camera that captured his parents getting killed? Was it in a tree branch?
Oh my God,
Where
yeah.
was that camera?
I have all these things written down as well.
I'm
but
sorry.
I did not understand these.
So conflicting ideologies, I guess, which I was disappointed that it wasn't more detailed because these are all supposed to be smartly written characters, and most of them just had absolutely no motivations
Well,
at all.
You said it in the intro. That was perfect. That in previous films they would be able to get into a room and figure this out.
Yeah,
without
they're
this-
smart people.
Yeah, without this stupid made up.
They're
fight.
not Zack Snyder written Batman Superman. They're supposed to
No.
be better than that.
And they've had enough time to grow these characters that we know that they would make smarter choices than
you
this.
can't. Captain America hasn't done enough good things to get 5 minutes to explain himself and get the benefit of the doubt. Hey, guess what? Bucky may be innocent. You're my friend. Can you listen? Iron Man's just like, fuck you, we're fighting.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense. Okay, so at the beginning of the movie, the Avengers are on like this kind of mission. I get it's a generic mission to like retreat.
It's the beginning of every Marvel movie now. We've got the generic mission at the beginning that's not really going to be that big and exciting.
It is,
just to
but this
kick off
one
the action.
tries to throw in Crossbones, aka Rumlow.
Who
If
I was
anybody
really
doesn't know who-
excited to see
I was too,
come
and
back.
the pictures of him online look great.
Not having watched previews, I was hoping that he was going to be the main villain because I knew if this movie's main antagonists were the heroes fighting each other, which it really is, that's the main antagonist. I mean, there is another villain in this film, but the main antagonist of the film is that they fight each other. There's no real dramatic tension to that. No one is going to kill each other. I knew that no one was going to kill each other
Of course not.
of these heroes. And even if somebody died accidentally or whatever, there is no real stakes in this film.
No, and they should have killed Rhodey. Don Cheadle clearly doesn't want to be in these movies anymore. He gets 10 seconds of screen time, 2 or 3 lines. Why have him be a paraplegic? Why not just have him die?
And he's not. Within 5 minutes, he was already up and walking. Yeah, he's being assisted by these robotic legs,
just
whatever.
Do Don Cheadle and us a favor and take him out of the series. War Machine
would've meant
does
something.
nothing. He says nothing.
This movie would have worked a lot better if he had died. Although the way he would have died, with Vision like accidentally shooting him, it was his own side shoots him down. That was totally stupid anyway. They really should have set up some stakes here where somebody shot somebody else out of the sky, even if it was accidental, but the other side shot him out of the sky and it fucking killed him. I did not know that he was gonna live. So in that moment where they pull off the mask and he's bloodied and he's laying on the ground, I was accepting, okay, make him dead. I knew
him
Marvel
dead.
does not kill their characters, so I wasn't sitting there saying he's dead. You did not prove to me
He's not
dead.
even a Marvel character hardly. Just kill him.
Really. But 5 minutes, really within about 5 minutes of screen time, they've set him, or they've got him, in the hospital pretty much fine. They say a couple things, he might be paralyzed, but he's totally fine. We know that he's out of danger.
Yeah.
And then 20, 30 minutes later in the film, he's set up as walking again. It's like, where is the dramatic tension?
Well, now we don't just get a boring Don Cheadle Rhodey. Now we get a boring paraplegic Don Cheadle Rhodey who doesn't do anything in the movies anyway.
Yeah, I doubt they're going to keep him around. Well, they'll probably need more people to kill off. Eventually, they're going to kill some people in this
So
series,
you just
aren't
made
they?
me think of something really great because I had said Crossbones was used as a plot device to set things in motion for the plot, and then he's killed, and it sucks. You're right, because Crossbones in the comic was a big foe of Captain America, but he was always funded by someone. He was just a terrorist. He
Yeah.
was like a henchman terrorist, but he was really strong. He figured out a way to match Captain America's strength by using all these mechanics and stuff in his suit. So
They could have kept the story the same with the villain they had and had him somehow secretly fund this guy.
Absolutely.
And then have two guys to beat towards the end and whatever. It would have been so much
But
better.
instead, they went with Zemo, who literally has the dumbest motivations of anything.
yes.
So the next missed opportunity was the Raft. I don't know if you know anything about the Raft, but the Raft
I've
is...
never read any of these comics, so I don't know the
The
details.
Raft
that
is
come
where
from the
they
comics.
place supervillains in the Marvel
Okay.
world. That's where supervillains go. And it's a big thing, and when it popped up out of the water in the
should have
trailer, I think
seen
a
a
lot
few.
of... That's what I'm saying.
They should have
Well, here's the thing.
established
There's
a few
hardly any
guys.
left because they don't keep their villains alive, but how badass would it have been if the Abomination was in one of those cells?
There you go.
One of the
Was
only
he
villains,
alive at the end of that
He was
film?
the
I
one of the
can't
only
remember.
villains left alive who they caught and captured.
Then they
How
should bring him back
fucking
at some
cool
point
would that
in
have
the
been
film.
if he was if like either Tim Roth or the monster was in one of those cells?
Yeah, yeah.
Instead, they just have like Hawkeye and Ant-Man singing "Nobody Knows the Trouble I Feel." Basically,
No, they have all the best characters of the film locked away. in
locked
those
away
cells.
for the rest of the movie.
Yeah.
Oh, so I'd said in my intro, this movie is not a Captain America movie, and in my opinion, it's not. It started out as a Captain America movie, but then it almost became a Bucky movie. Was there some memo that I missed where people love that character?
Well, I did like the Winter Soldier.
Yeah, but that's
as
because he was a
villain.
bad guy.
Yeah, but as
He was
soon
a
as you
good
learn
foe.
who he is and the mask comes off, he's
Did
not as
those
interesting.
two guys have something in their past that they're not telling us about? You know,
Well, is the Bucky Barnes character really big in the
he's not.
comic
He's
book?
not written the same way.
In fact, I think I read that he takes over for Captain America. at
Yeah,
some
he does.
point.
They're never going to do that with
No,
these
I
movies.
don't. If they want to kill a character, one that's one of their main characters, sure, kill him off in 2 or 3 movies or whatever. Movies are already set up that way, but so are comic books. That constantly people take over the mantle of the next
No,
guy.
yeah, no,
Why have we
absolutely.
not truly seen that in any of these comic book movies?
I know.
They always have to completely reboot.
Yes.
Let's see a mantle change in one
Yeah.
of these films.
I think we eventually will if they can. It depends on how deep these Marvel movies go because now that they've reintroduced Peter Parker the right way, eventually Miles Morales, who is the African American Spider-Man, comes along. I hear that there's plans to do that eventually, but who the hell knows how long that'll be. But you were talking about how like this would be the best
Marvel
franchise
trilogy.
Marvel trilogy. I still think it is.
I think
but
so
we
because
still
of the
have
quality.
another
This is
Thor
still a
movie.
quality film.
So-
And that's why I would think this is still probably the best.
This was still
series.
a strong movie. It had strong
If they make a
things. It
third
just-
Avengers that's strong, I could probably say that because I did like Ultron. I didn't hate it. So
Oh, I know you didn't really care that much for The Dark Knight. I'm correct on that, right? Or
no, I
not
like
as much as like.
I like the Dark Knight.
Okay,
I
you
wasn't a
did.
fan of the Dark Knight Rises.
That's what I'm saying. This movie kind of had the same weight on its shoulders. Because to me, The Winter Soldier is almost a better movie than The Dark Knight in certain regards. It's very different. But if you're comparing that part 2, because part 1 to me, it's just like a montage of, hey, here's this character. It's almost like we should have just been watching it in history class in a black and white VHS cassette or something. It's a cool movie, but there's no stakes
throwback
because
sensibilities.
I do too. I enjoy it for that, and Joe Johnson's great at that stuff.
But seriously, I do hope that with Infinity Wars or whatever they now want to rename it, that they are going to bring back some characters like I had forgotten about Abomination, but that would be great. Bring him back. Bring back Red Skull. Bring
That would have
a few
been
of these
such a
guys
good
back.
cameo in the Raft because he's literally, I think, the only villain still alive. You know, I mean, except for Justin Hammer, but I don't think he goes in that prison. I think he goes in a regular prison. You know, that'd be cool if like Sam Rockwell showed up for a quick second. So what did you think was the purpose of bringing Thunderbolt Ross back into this movie from the Incredible Hulk?
I think they
Just
they
to
needed
tie
somebody
that
to be
together?
that bureaucrat character, and then it was just a throwback to an earlier film instead of just establishing a new guy. But
Yeah, because he seemed to disappear at the end of this one. The whole conflict just turned out. I don't really even know what the resolution was at the end of this movie. What was the resolution?
Well, it's really lame. The final resolution that Captain America, when he sends the letter to Tony Stark, and he's
living
phone,
at
and he's
Castle
just-
Grayskull with the giant leopard
yes,
or whatever,
exactly.
the giant panther freaking statue.
He's like, hey, we're still friends, and I'll always be there for you. So really, we sat through this movie for absolutely nothing.
Because what is the end result as far as the UN is concerned? I don't understand. I don't know.
I think they're considering Captain Rogers, whatever, Captain America, and the group that he breaks out of the raft. They're all considered fugitives
Yeah.
right now.
Yeah, I'm sure
And
Hawkeye
they
is really happy that he went and helped them for no apparent reason.
And that final phone call was Ross or whatever saying, "Hey, we need your help to track these guys down."
yeah,
so
and Stark
there
being
may
funny
be,
Stark, put
yeah,
him on hold.
but there may be the next film will be like tracking these guys down or something like that. But
let's talk about sides here, because to me, going into this movie, I was like, okay, I get it. Like, there's no way I can be on Tony Stark's side because he's hypocritical, blah blah blah. At one point, though, early on, I think it was after Black Panther chased. Cool scene. Black Panther was pretty cool. The chase down the street under the tunnel. At that point, I remember thinking to myself, why doesn't Captain America just sign this fucking piece of paper? That way he can legitimately go to the UN and be like, hey guys, now that we've all signed the accord, can I bring something to you? I think my friend Bucky is innocent, and do it legally. It doesn't make sense. He's supposed to be, he's not the brightest person in the world, Steve Rogers, but he's not supposed to be that dumb. There's a flashback scene or two that we're not seeing between him and Bucky that happened to them when they were kids. I'm not talking inappropriate stuff. That he saved his fucking life, or what did he do that he's so, I have to save this guy no matter how many cars get flipped over on the freeway or how many people have to
how much other collateral damage was created in every single one of these
just to save this guy that doesn't really want to live anyway. Like, if I was Bucky, I'd be like, you know what, thanks but no thanks, just let him capture me. My fucking life sucks.
Yeah,
like, what am I living for?
That is the resolution for Bucky. He says, put me back in the ice at the end.
But then what was the whole thing about? Just put me in a cell. Okay, so, but anyway, what were you thinking about that? I mean, sides-wise, were you flipping sides, or were the whole time you just going, one side is clearly right and one side is clearly wrong?
I think Captain America's side made sense, that you wouldn't want to be under control of the UN, for one. I mean, I wasn't really picking sides, but I think if I was going to say which one made more sense to me, I would have picked Captain America's side. It's hard to say because, this group, the Avengers or whatever, grows every film, and you add new people. The chick that's supposed to be the problem, the Scarlet Witch, when they set up her being the one that caused this explosion or whatever.
When actually she saved thousands and thousands of people from nuclear annihilation.
Including Captain America or whatever. Yeah. So, any of these people could cause the same kind of problem, but her powers are so undefined in this series of movies so far. She just shows these powers, like in Age of Ultron, she's able to mind fuck the entire group and cause them all to go down in one fight scene. Basically, if she wasn't stopped
by Thor, who's a god,
she beats them all basically. So in this movie, she never does that, but she does all these other things that are, I don't know, that she had the powers to just stop any kind of size, matter, and control it however she wants. Like the weight of things that she's holding up with her power. It's just ridiculous.
And was it just me, or were the teams semi-lopsided? And just hear me out real quick. So Iron Man, who is indestructible suit of armor, who shoots pulse rockets out of his hands, has War Machine, who has the same armor and guns all over, and has the Vision, who can just disintegrate city blocks in 1 second with his forehead. They somehow think they need Spider-Man to come and help them against a guy with a bow and arrow and a chick with what is it that she had? Oh wait, no, that Black Widow was on Tony Stark's side. But the sides seem very lopsided.
They have all the good people.
They have all the good people. Seriously, they could just send the Vision to go and kill all of those people.
Except Scarlet Witch.
Because they're in love with each other. It's so hilarious when Vision just like walks into the movie and you're completely forgetting that he's going to be in it because he's so out of this world in comparison to like anything from the Winter Soldier.
Yeah.
And he's wearing like a Cosby sweater.
Yeah, that was pretty funny.
So here's another thing. How the hell did Black Widow so easily say okay to this issue after that speech that she had on Capitol Hill, contradicting everything that she did in this movie?
No, nobody's loyalties
made any sense. It took her 5 seconds in this movie to forget about everything she said at the end of Winter Soldier, which was a good speech.
Exactly. And everything they had set up, just her character would not trust these governments.
No, and she didn't. She'd be the last one to sign anything. She's got all that past as a KGB spy.
Exactly, yeah. She was worried about her past getting out in the last film and everything.
Okay, I think we already said it, but 16 people were how many people died in that building. I love how that's what somehow worse than the 16 people.
But New York and all the other things they bring up, and then there were even other ones that they didn't bring up that happened in like Age of Ultron and stuff. The whole fight in like South Africa or whatever,
Korea or Hong Kong.
There's that one as well. Weren't brought up, and all of those have collateral damage, more probably than 16 people. Guaranteed.
And with the Hulk, and no one. It's funny that no one's, especially Thunderbolt Ross, whose entire existence in the comics is trying to like bring down Hulk. He never once says, "Where the fuck is Hulk? We know you're hiding him." I think they mentioned Hulk and Thor one time.
I forget if it's him who mentions it or somebody within the group. I think
Thor, I get it.
No,
He
it's
doesn't.
him.
He doesn't belong in this movie.
it's
He's from another world. He doesn't belong in this movie.
The Thunderbolt Ross character is the one who says, you know, where is Thor and Mr. Banner or Dr. Banner? If we had misplaced a few nuclear warheads, people would have questions or something.
That's right. That's exactly what the line was. Yeah,
and that makes sense. Like that part does make sense of why they're seeing all these guys each as their own nuclear bomb that you have to keep track of and have to have some kind of control over, and they can't just fly off to whatever corner of the world they want to do whatever they want to do on any time they want to do it. I get that they wanted to have control and they would bring it up, but I don't get that any of these people would agree to it.
No.
Iron Man included. I mean, his whole attitude from the beginning of the series was he's not going to listen to anybody but himself.
His arc was apparently shifted because he created Ultron, and that ended up killing tons of people.
And you do see that in Ultron, that he's the guilt over it and stuff, and even the guilt they try to set up in Iron Man 3, how he feels about things.
Yeah. And then the whole subplot of writing Gwyneth Paltrow out by just saying she left him.
So was that a way of writing her out for the rest of the Marvel universe?
I assume. Why else would they do that? She could come and do a 2-minute cameo. Like she hasn't been in a Marvel movie since Iron Man 3.
They've had plenty of ways to write around her.
Yeah, and instead it's just like, oh, Pepper left me. So how do you think Tony Stark knew who the hell Spider-Man was by watching a couple YouTube clips? And know exactly where to go.
Producers told him. Honestly,
it's not supposed to matter, right?
No, it was so shoehorned into the movie.
It was so shoehorned
because they got the rights in the middle of making
the movie.
Fun appearance.
It was great. Oh, he was fucking
scene.
Awesome.
He was great, and his intro was a lot of fun. Like I said, that was when they let Tony Stark go back to being Tony Stark and have a great time, and we really. That whole middle segment of the film is the best segment of the film. Introing Spider-Man, and I don't know if it's like the very next scene is the airport, but very quickly we get to the airport scene, which is the best scene of the movie in my opinion.
I got really excited when we saw Spider-Man get recruited by Tony Stark, and then when Hawkeye opens the van up and you see Ant-Man and he just doesn't know shit about what's going on. He just doesn't care. He just wants to be included.
Yeah,
He was awesome because he was starstruck. He's like, I'll just do whatever you want.
I think we're probably both going to agree, but Ant-Man and Spider-Man probably were the two best characters of the film.
Oh, absolutely. Well, honestly, I don't know why Anthony Mackie's not getting more love, but that character has grown on me so much. He's so much more of a badass than he was ever actually written in the comics. He's just like a sidekick to Captain America. I just think he kicks so much ass. He's gotten so much better as a character. He's doing a lot with what he's given.
Yeah.
But I agree with you about Spider-Man and Ant-Man.
I thought Winter Soldier, I was saying that the characters they brought to that one, like Falcon and even the Winter Soldier himself, they were all these interesting characters I was really excited to see. Oh, Crossbones was the other one.
Yeah.
I was really excited to see all three of these characters grow in later films. And I think because Falcon is a good guy, we get more screen time, usually a little bit more backstory with him, but the things they've done with him have been great through all the films. Even the small amount of time he gets in like Age of Ultron or whatever, or Ant-Man and stuff like that, he's always been a fun character, and I really like Anthony Mackie playing this role.
I do too. He's great.
Unlike War Machine, who never really came to life or was that interesting on screen, this guy's a great sidekick who's not just a sidekick, who shows up for 5 minutes of screen time per film.
Yeah, exactly.
He actually is really part of this universe.
And he's made all these cool modifications to his suit, so he's not just doing the same thing over and over again.
Yeah, I really did like, I forget, is it Redbird or his little
that's
his little Falcon
drone. I'm so glad that they made it a drone in the movies, because in the comics he has a mental telepathic connection with a real bird.
Okay.
You couldn't get away with that in these movies.
That was another thing I thought was missing a little bit in this film. The Winter Soldier had a lot of really cool tech, especially the SUV that Nick Fury escapes in, and all of Black Widow's little the little things that she tosses to EMP people and stuff like that. And just even the handheld stuff that she battles people with. And I felt like some of those were in this film, but it wasn't used the way it was in that film.
I agree. With the Winter Soldier, they were still under S.H.I.E.L.D., so they had this tech to play with. And then in Age of Ultron, they had all of Stark's money, and they had the Avengers headquarters up in the tower. Mm-hmm. It seems like none of them ever go to the compound in this movie. they just have what they have to use, and they don't have the tech. They don't have the cool cars or the. I mean, even the whole thing is like, oh look, there's the last Quinjet. We need to get it. It's like, why was that the last Quinjet? I don't understand.
And why was it just not blown up if that's really all they're trying to keep him from getting to it?
Yeah,
just
right.
blow it up. I mean, they're willing to like completely blow up the whole airport to stop him from getting in this jet. Just blow up the jet.
I haven't heard anybody else mention this at all. Is where the hell was Nick Fury? Doesn't anybody think that the person who created the Avengers might have an opinion on this whole matter?
Well, and why are they saying like the Avengers have been running around with nobody watching out for them for the
Yeah,
last 4 years?
most of them were
they were
under
created by
S.H.I.E.L.D..
S.H.I.E.L.D.
Yeah.
For a number of movies, we see them working under S.H.I.E.L.D., going on missions for S.H.I.E.L.D.
Yeah.
So they already had somebody controlling them.
Yeah,
what,
there's
what
not
is all
really.
this bullshit?
Only Age of Ultron are they doing anything that they weren't told to do.
And even then, they are like they're trying. At the beginning, they're trying to stop the last few members of Shield,
Or
the
of
last few members
Hydra.
of Hydra, but they're doing it for Shield.
Yeah,
I
no,
mean,
they
Shield
still
doesn't
are.
exist, but they're doing it as like
They're the next incarnation of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Yeah,
once S.H.I.E.L.D.
just
goes down.
onto their own.
When Thunderbolt is showing them all these clips, which is goofy because half of them were just straight footage from the movie, and then half
totally.
of them were trying to be like surveillance footage.
Yeah.
But when he says Washington, D.C., Falcon looks over at Captain America, he looks at him in shame. It's like, why? Like, you just saved
the whole city.
millions of people from getting shot
Yeah.
by this algorithm thing. You didn't do anything wrong. Those helicarriers, from what we could tell, fell into the ocean or something.
Yeah,
So what did
they
kill?
tried to show it that they didn't really create a ton of collateral damage, but then in this film, one of those clips that wasn't from the film, they try and show like this big wave of
people
water
running,
wash
yeah.
over some people. Like, what did they get? Washed to the ground and broken ankle? I
Yeah,
mean, they
it's
probably
just-
didn't die even.
If they weren't there doing that, all those millions of people would have been shot by those things, and then those things would have just continued and shot everybody. It wasn't strong. The case against them to me just didn't work, and the fact that is what the UN has been around for 70 years and they can't agree on shit for 70 years, and that's what they agree on. They finally have a way to like get people to stop real threats. So let's talk about this villain, if you want to call him that.
Sure.
So aside from him just being so he's a special forces Sokovian nationalist guy or whatever. He's the guy from Inglourious Bastards. He's a good actor.
Yeah, Daniel Bruhl.
Yeah, that's his name. Yeah, he's good. And I thought he did fine in his scenes in this. For a while I was curious because I don't know much about Zemo in the comics, but I guess he's in it. It seemed like for a minute there he was kind of keeping it more in tone to Winter Soldier because they would show him and he would be, doing some brutal interrogation stuff, doing some water torture stuff or whatever with people. And I was like, okay, this is cool. It's still got its little espionage thing going on in it. But then he's just, Mom and Dad died in Sokovia and I want to kill tons of innocent people to make myself feel better.
His plan is to get these guys, kill innocent people, to trick these guys into thinking that they need to fight each other. But really, the reasons that they want to fight each other has nothing to do with him, has to do with what the Winter Soldier did under control of the Russian powers or whatever back in that whole 1991, flashback scene, which is really what sets everything in motion for this film. It's all started back in 1991. But then that's bullshit at the end. Like, I think even though we like Tony Stark as a hero and we wouldn't really want to see him kill someone in cold blood on screen in that way, I don't think he would stop himself from killing the Winter Soldier knowing that he killed his mother and his father. I mean, really killed them both.
Well, he didn't stop himself. He got beat.
Yeah, he got beat down, but now he's just kind of like over it. It's like he'd spend some money to get somebody to go find the Winter Soldier and have him assassinated.
Yeah, and it's such a bummer that the movie, knowing how well some of these characters, I hope that's not an overstatement. I think that they've been written really well for comic book characters in the movies. Knowing how well they've been written and fleshed out through all these movies and their up and down relationships between them. I've never been a huge fan of the first Avengers movie. But the one thing I noticed after watching this one that it had a lot of those characters talking shit out. And maybe that was boring, and I guess, my biggest problem with the Avengers is they spend like 2 frickin' hours of that movie in that helicarrier, but they're talking and they're getting to know each other and they're figuring out what they don't like about each other and what they do. This movie no one wanted to talk about anything. They just wanted to beat the shit out of each other. And that's not who these people have been up until this point.
And the reality of when they start fighting each other, it's said by, I think, Scarlet Witch at one point, hey, you were pulling your punches. They're pulling their punches the whole movie. So why, as an audience, do we give a shit about this?
Yeah, I know. I love it. They say that. I knew that was going to be like the focal point of like, hey, we're not really fighting when when Black Widow and Hawkeye had to have
That
their
was
little
funny.
like,
I enjoyed
no, it was
that.
funny because those two love each other. They're not going to fight each other for those two assholes.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
Which they never made any. I get it. Hawkeye's not a huge character, but at least tell us why the hell he came out of retirement
Why
to
he
do
chose
any
the
of
size
this.
that
He
he
doesn't
chose.
care about any of those people.
Yeah. He should care about his family a lot more than most people. Yeah.
Instead, he ends up in the raft prison, which is ridiculous that they would put them in there. So let's talk about, if you want to talk about some of the things that we actually liked about it.
Sure.
Because there's lots of things I liked about it, too.
I liked a lot of the characters. There wasn't really anybody new that they introduced that I enjoyed too much. Well,
No.
I'm sorry, Spider-Man was
You
a lot
weren't a
of
fan
fun.
of Black Panther?
I didn't think Black Panther was. I didn't think the introduction of him. It was just such a forced moment, meeting him at that conference or whatever.
Where
and
the first
seeing-
second we meet him, his whole entire motivation comes to full circle. Where his
yeah,
dad dies
it was
2
just,
seconds after he shows up.
Yeah,
in
it
the-
was just too obvious and forced. And then in what we saw in Winter Soldier, the way the action scenes played out, and the way we could kind of buy into the wild physics that occasionally are on display in that film. They just didn't bring it to life in this one. It felt very cartoony
Yeah.
in some of those scenes.
Yeah, and the way that Age of Ultron finally got it right with the interplay between the characters' powers, where like Thor would throw the shield and Thor
They
would
combo
hit it
up
with
and
his
do
hammer.
different things. Yeah,
They did that, and I think they got it right in Age of Ultron. And in this one, they don't do that. They do the opposite. They fight each other. But here's the thing: like these two sides are so not equal with one another that you don't get to see like. I want to see like Vision shooting a laser at Scarlet Witch and her deflecting it with her powers and swinging it back at him. I don't just want to see Captain America and Iron Man punching each other. Does Captain America not realize that when you punch Iron Man's face, it doesn't do anything?
hurts your own hand probably more than anything. Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean,
I wanted to see
none of
their
these guys
powers
can be-
using against each other this time, but it was just I thought
because they
Ant-Man
were
was the
pulling their
coolest part of the
punches.
fight.
They didn't want to actually hurt each other.
But that's the thing. Ant-Man didn't know any of these people regardless. He just wanted to he wanted to show how badass he was to these
Yeah.
people, and he kicked everybody's ass that he went after.
well, like him and Spider-Man. Why I think they both work so well. They show up and they're both.
They don't know. Yeah, they don't have a stake
The
at
little
all.
bugs on each side, and they're both being told by the leader of the group, just
Yeah.
take care of this, do this, get inside of this for us or whatever, mess this thing up. or
So
whatever.
great how Spider-Man's keeps asking Tony Stark, "Hey, was that okay? Is that what I'm supposed to do?" Like
Yeah.
that's who Spider-Man is.
Yeah, no, that was that whole fight scene was great, and the interaction between all the characters in that scene were great, and Ant-Man's one moment,
Oh, God.
where he lets
I
his
think
powers
he had
show and stuff was
when,
awesome.
When he got into, was it Iron Man's suit?
Yeah.
And what was he saying
When he's,
to him?
when he's talking, he's like, "This is you're gonna need to take this into the shop."
Yeah.
He's like, "Who the hell is this? This is your conscience. We don't talk very much."
This is your conscience.
He
That
was
was
great.
awesome.
Yeah, all the comedy that he brought, and Spider-Man, all of them. I thought Hawkeye had some great moments. Of
Yeah, he
comedy.
did, he
Falcon
did.
had some funny moments, and even Iron Man. He's by the end he gets to kind of be back to his witty self a little bit. But there's just so many scenes that don't play out as what we're used to from the Iron Man from the Tony Stark character.
I think that Ant-Man benefited, obviously, from having his own film already. And Spider-Man also benefits because we already all know who he is, and they jump him right in.
Yeah.
I think the problem with Black Panther is the majority of the people don't know who he is, so when
he
he's
seems
there
a
to
little
fight,
bland right
and
now.
he almost seems bad. But then at the end, he seems like he's going to become a superhero of sorts. So you kind of you basically get his origin in this movie. He starts becoming Black Panther when his dad dies. I don't know how his old
I'm not
dad
sure
was
that-
getting in that suit.
Well, they
but
mentioned that is a hero within their lands that
Yeah.
is passed from man to
it's
man
kind of
or
like
whatever,
how
so-
the Phantom is, the comic book The Phantom.
Somebody else has already been the Black Panther for his.
just like the Phantom. It's always passed on.
Yeah. So is his suit completely
Vibranium.
made of that stuff?
Yeah.
So he's an Iron Man essentially as
He's
well.
an iron, and
with
it
even
makes
stronger
Captain America's
metal because
shield an afterthought.
yeah, if this is supposed to be the most. Yeah, why not just be in a suit made of that, Captain America? I did like that they mentioned. It was mentioned to Spider-Man. What did Captain America saying? Oh, well, what else did he tell you about me? He said, "Oh, go for your legs" or whatever. That seemed like that comes right out of like 3 or 4 movies of watching Captain America defend himself with the shield. It's always like, why don't you just shoot him in the legs? Like,
Yeah.
I've thought that too many times while watching these movies, and so it was kind of nice to see them go there.
Yeah, it was.
And he makes the joke about, boy, that shield really doesn't follow the laws of physics. Because that's the other thing you think of while watching all these Captain America
How
movies.
does it know who to hit and when and who to deflect off of and how to
just
come
buy
back?
into he's perfect at throwing it. He knows what
well,
he's doing.
That's his superpower.
But it was
pretty
nice
much.
for them to kind of make jokes at those
Oh,
at the
absolutely.
expense of that.
Absolutely. There wasn't a single thing that Spider-Man said that I didn't find absolutely perfect to who that character is. It was kind of interesting to bring him into this one, even though I'm with you. He was shoehorned as shit into this movie.
Big time.
But wow, done right though. You could have shoehorns that don't
moment
work.
Of the movie, so I guess I'm glad they did it.
No, there's shoehorns that absolutely don't work, and that one totally works.
Yeah.
You know?
If we're just mentioning moments that I think, I know this moment got a huge cheer by the audience.
We got a couple cheers in my theater too.
Was Captain America finally puts the moves on that girl that was watching from across the hall, has the kiss moment with her, and then the look he gets from the two guys in the car, from Winter Soldier and Falcon. That seemed to have like the biggest laugh in the audience.
I was cheering when he kissed Agent 13.
Yeah.
Because she's a huge love interest of his.
Okay, again,
later
I don't
on.
read the comics, so I don't know
But these
how
movies aren't
going
going to be
people
exactly
are.
like that. That may be the last time you see her as a
Well,
character.
but I
Who knows?
did like that she became more of a character. Like I thought that she might disappear after that last film, and the fact that they were able to bring her back and have her be, I don't know if in the comic book she truly is this niece to Agent Carter.
Yes.
So maybe I would have already been aware. Like I guess a lot of fans maybe were already aware of that while watching Winter Soldier.
I don't
if
think
they read comics.
It didn't matter because when you found it out in the movie, like the person I was with watching it was pleasantly surprised.
I was
they
pleasantly
didn't know
surprised.
That. Yeah.
I really enjoyed that, and I thought being able, even though Agent Carter wasn't a huge character in the last two films, only in that first film, and I guess she got like a TV series built around her, or whatever.
Yeah, I never watched it.
It was nice. Neither did I, but it was nice to see her story kind of tied up here. It was. I thought that was a nice moment in the film.
I thought it was
seeing
a great
him go
moment.
to the funeral. And
I had
stuff.
no idea that was going to happen. That wasn't shown in any ads or anything like that. I thought it was a great moment.
Yeah.
And it made him vulnerable, and it gave him one last, because I was always confused after Winter Soldier why he and Black Widow were never more. I don't necessarily think they needed to be romantically involved, but
I like it
they
better
were
than having the
perfect in that
brother-sister
movie together.
relationship.
Yeah, their chemistry was awesome in that movie. It seems like Black Widow is supposed to be always alongside Captain America because they're similar in so many regards. This movie, for some bizarre fucking turn of events, she turns to Tony Stark's side, who she despises in these movies. But you do get that scene where she goes to the funeral and says, "I didn't want you to be alone," and gives him a hug. So that's kind of like their last, like, "Hey, we're awesome together, but I guess we're gonna be on opposing sides."
She does. She's the one character that kind of flips sides towards the end.
Yeah, she flips sides, never to be seen from again.
Yeah.
Scarlett Johansson is non-existent in this movie literally 1 or 2 minutes after the airport fight. She's just gone. They never show her again. This movie...
Well, there's a moment where Tony Stark is talking to her on the railing.
That's
or
the last
something,
time you see her.
And is that... I forget
That's
exactly
just a
what
few
moment
minutes
in the
after.
film
That's
is.
right after like Bucky and Cap
It's
take off.
probably before Iron Man goes to the prison or whatever.
Yeah.
To check on everybody.
Yeah. Scarlett Johansson just disappears
Yeah.
from the movie. Like, I guess she just leaves, or
How many...
there's so many loose ends not tied up. This movie literally just ends.
Yeah.
It just ends, and that's it.
How many fucking suits has Iron Man made that are built around, built out of a watch, built out of a cufflink?
Yeah.
He's got the one that's like the cigarette lighter in his helicopter that he pushes his finger in, and it builds an entire suit around
Is
his
that
fucking
real?
finger. Yeah, he puts his finger in like the fucking button, and it builds the suit around his finger, and he lays back in the chair, and he flies out the back of the helicopter.
Oh, that's in that was in this one when he leaves the prison.
When he leaves the
Yeah.
prison on his way to the finale.
Well, then he's got
he
that
puts
one-
his suit on by sticking his finger in the thing, and it builds around his whole fucking finger. It's
That's
just,
the most ridiculous one I've
yeah,
heard.
it's the most ridiculous
Before
one.
that, it was the one where he had his suit in a suitcase that took 5 minutes to get on while Whiplash sat there and watched him put
Yeah.
the suit on. Performance-wise, I really like Chris Evans. I think I can't even imagine anybody else being that character now. I like Robert Downey Jr. in almost anything. I am getting fatigued. I've said this the last 2 or 3 times I've seen Iron Man on screen. It's still great. It's better than nothing.
Well,
but
and they're just ingraining him more and more into everybody else's films. Like,
yeah,
we can't have a
and now
film
he's
without him
supposed
now.
to be a huge part in the new Spider-Man
Mentor,
movie.
which I think we'll want to see. I think the chemistry we had in this film was fun to see. So
It was.
I'm excited to actually see that film, except that the director is.
My biggest problem acting wise, hands down for me, goes to, I'm sorry, I'm sure he's a great guy, maybe he's got good performances in him, but Sebastian Stan, for me, man, it's not just the character. He just doesn't have anything that's interesting about him.
He's so much more interesting when he's not speaking. Every time he opens his mouth in the film, he just ruins it.
Yeah, they were very smart in The Winter Soldier, having him as just literally a silent assassin.
Yeah.
In this one, when he's trying to explain things, I'm giggling. It's bad. He's just not. Maybe he just doesn't understand the character, and I didn't like his performance at all in this movie. So yeah, I liked the movie. I didn't love it. I was disappointed by it. I wanted better after The Winter Soldier. I wanted it to have more of that feel coming from the Russo brothers. We both wanted more of that action that was so damn intense in that movie.
Yeah, I mean, my favorite kind of action is like cause and effect action, where you see something cause the next thing to happen, where within an action scene you have these beats that lead you from the next moment to the next moment. And usually there's a lot of, in a lot of these scenes, you'll find people just using whatever they can get their hands on to survive.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of that in Winter Soldier, and it was super exciting.
It was.
None of that in this. But this one just felt more like an Avengers or Iron Man action movie, like the way that they've shot the action scenes in those. And I wonder, did the studio somehow get involved and say, tone down the... It wasn't violent for violence sake or something.
It was not nearly as violent as Winter Soldier.
But Winter Soldier still had that visceral punch when people were getting nailed, there were a number of people who die in that film, and you feel it. And in this one, I can't even think of anybody that died that, you get that feeling when it happens.
Yeah.
If anybody even died, because really, they're not... The other thing that Winter Soldier had that was so great, it had that feeling of like heat, because there were so many action scenes that were just people
shooting at people, shootouts, and they're hiding behind cars.
Car chases and shootouts that feel ripped right out of films, realistic films like Heat, unlike superhero films. And this was just thrown back into that. Lots of superpowers. But you didn't have the villains that were where these action scenes were set up to be like these Heat type of action scenes. They were
I think when you introduce characters who can fly and characters that can shoot lasers and characters that have like heat repulsion come out of their body,
you lose the realism.
You lose that, and that's a lot of people give a lot of these Marvel one-offs crap for like, why don't you just call your Avengers buddies to help you? Well, the Winter Soldier, for whatever reason, none of the Avengers came to his aid when millions of people were going to die, was because it was an isolated movie, and it only worked with him and Black Widow and Falcon in it.
No,
everybody beyond that. I mean, I would have liked to have seen Hawkeye. I guess he was originally written in the script, and Jeremy Renner couldn't do it.
I almost think, I really like Jeremy Renner too, and I think Hawkeye's been entertaining in the last few films. The amount of time that he's got
in the last few films. Yeah.
So I'm not saying I would want to see him pushed to the sidelines, but I kind of think Falcon's a more interesting character at this point.
At this point, I'm just loving everything about the Falcon's character. He's so much more involved in everything going on than just some sidekick. Like, he's just not sitting there going, okay, Captain America, what do we do next? Like, he has a say-so. He's an Avenger, and he's a pretty tough one. I feel it's stronger than the other two Avengers movies because, to me, those were less than perfect with a lot of hype. The 2012 Avengers movie was a literal mess with misused characters. I think that, obviously we just said Hawkeye was totally misused in that movie. I think Thor came into it a little bit too late.
But that's the first time we really see him, right?
It's technically the second because he was in Thor, but it was literally a glorified cameo with 4 lines.
Yeah.
But Civil War, the thing it does is it attempts to mix that espionage, spy thriller stuff from Winter Soldier in with Avengers hokey, larger-than-life action stuff, and that's hard to do. Like, I think it's great that the Russo brothers have another movie that they've done, because now they join Joss Whedon and Jon Favreau as the only other people that have directed more than one Marvel movie.
Oh, got it. Okay.
Which is cool. There needs to be a
Well, they're going to get
consistency.
2 more, so they're going to end up with the most on their resume.
With what they were given, this movie did a lot. This was very, very, very different task than Winter Soldier, which is there's a single protagonist, and the movie is solely based on him. There's a couple side characters, there's a couple of villains, there's an interesting plot, develops well. This one, it was so different because it wasn't an adventure. It was just basically like politics back and forth and people fighting and people yelling at each other, and then it had to have some sort of conclusion. But when you look at how they took that material, they still made it into something that was probably better than, you know, you give it to somebody like Zack Snyder, and then nobody has. I mean, you can't really compare those two. I'm very proud of myself that Batman v Superman has literally only come up maybe one time as a comparison, because they're different leagues in my opinion. But I still think that they can do a great job, because that airport fight scene was freaking pretty great. It was pretty awesome. It was long, but it never really seemed to get boring, you know. But then the opening scene, I was so excited. Yeah, you're right. That's where I first noticed the shaky cam. And I was like, why are they doing that? But the opening scene still felt like a Winter Soldier scene to an extent, even though he's got the big team of people now. And as soon as Scarlet Witch starts like summoning up her red ooze from her hands, you're like, okay, no, this is a totally different
sucks
movie.
all the gas out of the building and has control over every gas particle and puts them all into a ball and sends them into the, I mean, just what she can do with her powers is so fucking vague and over the top from film to film.
I know, and
It's
people
bullshit.
keep pissing her off. Every movie they piss her off and they tell her more and more what she can and can't do. I'd be like, this person is gonna kill us all if we keep pissing her off. Like, she's strong enough to do. She takes the Vision down like with like
who's
nothing.
supposedly the only one that you couldn't stop.
Who's the closest thing to a god?
To a god in the group. He could pick up Thor's hammer in the last film,
and she just takes him down in 2 seconds.
Which was cheesy. Like, could she not have done that to anybody on
just,
the battlefield?
That Cosby sweater burned right off his chest. Were you ever wondering why the 5 other super soldiers were even written into the story? Because
to trick them into going.
I know, but
there.
why? Like, if he was gonna unleash them, that would be one thing. But he just kills them all, so they have no plot purpose whatsoever in the movie. Because he could have just told them where he was. He didn't need to make it seem like he was gonna unleash them all. It just, to me, it's just like you could have used anything.
So he had to trick them so that they could see the video, the really well shot surveillance camera video with 3 or 4 angles.
Why didn't he just mail that to Tony Stark?
Yes, exactly. Why not just like get him to see that anywhere else? Put it on fucking YouTube. I mean,
I don't know. I just don't know if Tony Stark and Captain America, after everything they've been through together, saving the world multiple times, would just fight that much for that guy.
Yeah, it's really like the point you made, where they should sit down and be able to talk about it, and they only need 5 minutes to figure out that they would be on the same side. And the one scene where they're supposed to do that, where he's talking about these are these pens that were used to sign a peace treaty in the past.
That's the only time they talk about anything.
And then he says, oh, but Scarlet Witch is being held captive. Oh my God, Tony, you never learn. And he gets upset in that scene and just kind of storms out, and they don't resolve anything because she's being held captive in a mansion or whatever. It's like, dude, they really could have worked it out right in that scene right there, but they didn't want them to.
Well, you don't have a movie if they do that,
exactly.
I guess. But why not? Why didn't the end?
You have a
like,
movie
you can
like,
have your awesome fight scene, but why not in the end? Instead of Captain America sending him a letter, which is total cop out, have them finally meet up and discuss shit, you know? And like, if Captain America has to go take me into custody, maybe that's a good way to end it.
But I do think that this movie did a better job of giving reason for 2 heroes who are friends to fight each other than other films have.
It's
been able
not
to pull
even
off.
Close. Yeah, I mean, no, the other one you're talking about that shall not be mentioned. That, I mean, we're trashing this movie because we were disappointed in how great it could have been and wasn't. I would watch this movie 15 times in a row before watching BVS one more time.
Agreed. Completely agreed.
I couldn't
remember.
We need to see Ant-Man become Giant Man and fuck shit up.
Which was the greatest moment of the movie.
When he's going, roar! And like, I think Spider-Man even says like, oh shit, or something like that. Yeah.
I think it's...
He goes, holy shit.
Is it Spider-Man or is it Iron Man?
It's Spider-Man. Yeah.
Okay.
No, Iron Man says, the funniest thing Iron Man says in the whole movie, that scene, he goes, does anybody on our team have any surprising and shocking abilities that we don't know
All the
about?
scenes that Spider-Man shows up for, Iron Man becomes the character we want him to be. He's got
because
the
they
wit
play
and
so
the humor.
great off each other.
Yeah, seriously. One thing I'd like to say about these directors, I think that I was really impressed with what they brought to the action scenes of Winter Soldier. The combination of how they shot it, edited it, the score, just the visceral feel of that's movie making.
It was one of my favorite movies of 2014.
Yeah, for sure. But I did think in that film as well, and it showed in this film, they do have a lack of like an artistic eye beyond the action scenes. It's got kind of a TV feel to it.
It does.
I'm not saying that just because they came from a TV background, but there's like no transitions that are really interesting. They have a lot of fade to black.
You know, storytelling is the hardest part of being a director, not how well you can compose an action scene. But it's great that they can do good action scenes. But, you know, I think Favreau has a gift for storytelling. Whedon, to an extent, he can be. I think the second movie, a lot of people said a lot of stuff got away from him, even though I liked the second Avengers movie. But I think storytelling comes with time and stuff like that, and it also comes with script. This one was more difficult because it just wasn't a
tight of a
progressing
script.
Story.
Yeah, that the Winter Soldier has a nice progression and it's a tight script.
Yeah, it's a perfect A to B to C to D. Yeah, with a beginning and
the motivations were all very clear in that one. Where in this one they're very muddled.
No, it's funny that the characters we like the best in this movie are the ones that had no motivations. That just like Ant-Man, Spider-Man, Hawkeye. They didn't give a shit about anything. They were just there and they had fun scenes.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah.
I'm gonna give this movie a 6.5.
So yeah, I think if I'm going to rate this movie, I would give it a 6.
Okay. I don't think any of these movies are terrible, with maybe Thor: The Dark World, because that movie just doesn't make any sense to me at all.
That's one thing that I guess I do want to clarify with the entire review here is that I think this is still a great movie. It's a fun movie within the Marvel universe and what Marvel's been putting out. I still think this is a nice addition to their catalog of films. But as a sequel to one of their best films and a film that transcends just the Marvel universe in general, it's a great action movie. It's a great espionage thriller. It's something we haven't seen a lot lately. Winter Soldier just really works on a level that a lot of these Marvel films aren't even working towards.
No, another strong film for Marvel. You know, they're going to make a ton of money.
Stay down. Final warning.
I could do this all day.
All right, I've run out of patience. On to roost!
Hey, everyone.
All right, that was our review for Captain America: Civil War. Hope you enjoyed it. If you enjoyed this review, leave us some comments below. Also, let us know what you thought of the movie, and let us know what your favorite movie in the Marvel Cinematic Universe is. Thanks for listening. This is John.
This is Ben. This is Cinema Gulp.
We'll see you next time. I drink your cinema! I drink it up!